Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, what's the update with the United States' so-called deal of the century? Well, we'll have the details on when the proposal will come out. Meanwhile, a shocking police raid reveals a Jewish cult with women and children as slaves. And finally, you probably thought Israelis didn't do winter sports, but we have the story of one young athlete who's covered in snow and winning big for Israel. The United States' so-called Middle East peace deal of the century is on its way, and before you say anything, I know we've been burned before by several delays, but a top administration official is now confirming reports that the deal could come out in just a few weeks' time, and irrespective, by the way, of Israel's third elections. White House National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien explains that the second half of the United States' plan had been delayed due to Israel's repeating political uncertainty. But with no end in sight, the Trump administration is apparently growing tired of waiting for elections to finish. And adding to speculation that the deal is finally coming is the fact that Avi Berkowitz had arrived in Israel last week for a series of senior-level meetings. Berkowitz is the new United States Middle East peace envoy, replacing Jason Greenblatt, who resigned. Now, we still don't know what the second half of this proposal will include, however. What we do know is the details of the first economic half of the deal, which was revealed in Bahrain in the summer of 2019, and it includes financial incentives almost exclusively for the Palestinians should they successfully conclude negotiations with Israel. Now, in efforts to pass the electoral threshold in March, Defense Minister and New Right Party Chairman Naftali Bennett will now be running together with the right-wing National Union Party under Transportation Minister Bezalel Smotrich. Israel's nightmare scenario, as we enter the third consecutive election cycle in a year, is that the deadlock will remain and fourth elections will be called. So to shore up the votes and strengthen their sides, parties across the spectrum are scrambling to put together their best party lists, especially as the deadline to submit party lists is just 48 hours away. And to many, that means unifying, like the left-wing Labor Gesher and Meretz parties just did, essentially ensuring that they'll pass the 3.25% electoral threshold. And let's not forget that the joint Arab list, Blue and White Party, and even the Likud have also absorbed or united with smaller parties to strengthen their ranks. Well, Bezalel Smotrich, the National Union Party chairman, is taking it further, saying the best course of action is to create the largest possible union to the right of the Likud. Meanwhile, though, at least for now, the far-right Otzma Yehudit and the Jewish Home Party under Education Minister Rafi Peretz have been left out. Still, overall, these last-minute negotiations are not expected to have much effect. The latest polls indicate that no matter how you slice it, the right-wing bloc will still only earn about 55 seats to the center-left's 57, with Lieberman's Israel Beitenu in the middle. That means that neither side will be any closer to forming a government. And here now to discuss the implications of the recent political change-ups, please welcome David Hermelin from the International Center for Public Diplomacy in Israel. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Now, Naftali Bennett of the New Right Party is considered to be more liberal than Smotrich's new party of the National Union. Why are they together?
I think this is a huge mistake. We have two political theories. One would say that the entire right wing should go together, all the parties together.
Which is what Smotrich ultimately says he wants.
Exactly. This is one theory. Another theory would say that the Orthodox voters are split into two main wings. The almost ultra-Orthodox and, more the liberal, so-called liberal wing of Bennett and Ayelet Shaked. And if you unite all of them together, some people would not feel comfortable to vote for this joint list. So what Mr. Bennett and Mr. Smotrich did, they chose the third option, which is mixed between the extreme right and the so-called liberal right. And the fear in the right wing now is that people will not feel comfortable to vote for them, from one hand, and people from the more extreme right will not feel comfortable to vote for Rabbi Rafi Peretz.
So maybe then you can speak to a new poll that has recently come out that suggests that 86% of the voter base in the right is perfectly happy, willing for a Smotrich-Bennett alliance, whereas I think it's something like under 10% is willing to vote then for Peretz. 7%, is willing to vote for Peretz and Ben Gvir from Otzma Yehudit. So, maybe it was the right thing to do.
But the thing is that that now we have the right wing has a danger that people will vote for Mr. Peretz and Ben Gvir, and it will not be enough to get inside the parliament, inside the Knesset. So it will be again a waste of votes, of many votes, which are critical to the political victory of the right wing and the parties from the center to the right, led by Netanyahu. This is why I think one of the two options should be chosen: extreme right and soft right, or all together. But to make this mix, while you have alternative from the more extreme right, and when I say extreme, this is not the extreme right of America and Europe. Yes, I don't want to blame anyone that is too extremist. Just if we compare to each other, if you have very right and right, so you cannot have very right and mixed of very right and right, because then the very right can be gone and will not pass and will not cross the bar, and then the result will be that the left wing, led by Kahol Lavan, Blue and White Party, and Benny Gantz will win.
All right. Well, so let's talk a little bit about the extreme right that you're mentioning, which I think by most accounts would include both Otzma Yehudit and Rafi Peretz. Rafi Peretz is recently in a lot of hot water for making homophobic comments, saying that homosexuality is unnatural and against Jewish values. Is that the sort of comment that is going to hurt him ultimately then, and Otzma Yehudit, now that they're together? Or is he speaking to a voter base that is not going to leave him either way?
I think that anyway, people who don't feel comfortable with those expressions, they wouldn't vote for him anyway, while they have the alternative of Mr. Bennett. And this is a good example. When Mr. Bennett will take now with him Mr. Smotrich, so people who dislike the anti-LGBT expressions in the past by Mr. Smotrich maybe will not vote for this liberal sort of...
So would the Likud benefit from this?
I'm not sure, because people who wouldn't vote for Likud wouldn't vote for Likud, unfortunately.
David Hermelin, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, now this next story will be shocking to some, and the details are still unfolding, but dozens of women and children in Jerusalem have now been discovered living in slave-like conditions, some for up to 10 years. ILTV's Nittany Manson reports.
מזה מספר חודשים מתנהלת חקירה ביחידה המרכזית של מחוז ירושלים בחשד לביצוע עבירות של עושק והחזקה בתנאי עבדות. מדובר במתחם בו מתגוררות כ-50 נשים ביחד עם ילדים בגילאים של בין שנה ל5, בתנאי צפיפות קשים ביותר ובתנאים סניטריים ירודים ביותר.
Spanning across 3 buildings, the compound, which apparently includes a kindergarten, is believed to belong to a Haredi or ultra-Orthodox Jewish cult. And the women and children who've been held there are thought to have endured years of both sexual and financial exploitation and abuse. Some were even allegedly forced to put their hands into fire to, quote, learn what hell feels like. And it's all reportedly been at the hands of the community's rabbi, and 8 other women suspected of cooperating as accomplices. But police have been investigating this cult for several years ever since it opened. The main suspect had even been arrested over similar suspicion in 2015, but was released after members of the alleged cult spoke out in his favor. Several other women who allegedly escaped, however, were the first to come forward about this den of abuse, which has been operating under the guise of a women's seminar.
In other news, the rate of Jewish immigration to Israel, or Aliyah, has steadily been rising every year, but in 2019, the Jewish state also granted a record high number of citizenships to Palestinians. In fact, Israel has granted citizenship to over 1,200 Palestinians living in East Jerusalem in the past year, 3 times the number of 2018. But on the flip side, the number of citizenship requests that have been denied is also now at an all-time high. 1,361 applications actually were rejected in 2019, to be exact. And for reasons like not being able to prove East Jerusalem as residency, poor Hebrew fluency, and of course, security concerns. The sharp change in both approvals and rejections, however, isn't related to any new change in the number of applications. Rather, it's proof that the Immigration Authority is processing applications more efficiently, as ordered by the High Court of Justice. Now, 27-year-old Israeli-American Naama Issachar is still in a Russian prison, sentenced to 7.5 years behind bars for drug smuggling. But to keep her spirits up, Sunday night she received an encouraging letter from none other than the Israeli Prime Minister himself. ILTV's Shanna Fold has the details.
Naama Issachar is running low on faith as she languishes in a Russian jail. The 27-year-old Israeli-American was changing planes in Russia on her way back to Israel from India when she was arrested. She was charged with drug smuggling after authorities claim she had a handful of marijuana in her checked luggage. That's a story she now vehemently denies. Her case has gained attention in Israel, with many saying the punishment does not fit the crime, and that she's being used as a geopolitical pawn. It is thought that Issachar's arrest is part of a bargaining technique that Russia devised in an effort to reclaim a Russian prisoner Israel had been holding in custody months ago. After court appeals and back-and-forth phone calls from Moscow to Jerusalem, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has sent a letter to Issachar saying the state of Israel is investing unending efforts to bring about your freedom. The PM went on to write, "Israel never leaves someone behind."
Now, the light rail is the biggest project in the history of Israel, and it was actually first discussed in 1948 when the country was just established. But construction only started just 6 years ago, and now it seems that the massive undertaking is hitting more and more roadblocks by the day. Well, here to tell us all about it is consumer behavior expert Dr. Ved Abraham. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, my first question is, this first line was supposed to be done years ago. All right, what happened?
All right, well, there are a lot of things that happened on the way. So one of the things that is really holding back this project, well, actually two major things. The first thing is that Bnei Brak, which is a religious city in Israel, did not allow the company.
For those who don't know.
Yes, right. It just very close to Tel Aviv, did not allow the company to work Saturdays, so it set it back a few months back.
Okay, but a few months is not like a decade.
Yes. Well, no, it was planned to open. It's planning to operate next year, but now it's probably going to happen in 2 years. A lot of consequences. But anyway, and the other reason is that the CEO, Yehuda Baron, he resigned. And one of the reasons why he resigned is because he had differences with the chair of the board. And after he resigned, a lot of senior administrative staff also
they followed him out?
Yeah, they followed him out. So that's why there was a setback. So one is Bnei Brak, the other one is
just no leadership, apparently.
Yeah.
All right, so what about the project is so complicated, though, that that the replacements at the top of this company can't figure it out?
Well, they've finished with the major and the most complicated part, which is actually the digging. So right now they're just constructing the stations underground. So the biggest obstacle, the biggest job, the biggest hurdle is already behind us. So the only reason we're set back is because of the works that cannot happen on Saturdays many of the times.
All right, so now why, because as I mentioned, we've been talking about this rail in Israel since 1948. Why is it so important to Israel to have this rail line, and what does it mean, for tourism, for example?
Okay, well, it's interesting that overall tourists are really happy with Israel. I mean, there was a study that was conducted by the tourism ministry, and it shows that about 40% of all people who come to Israel once are likely to come visit again. Actually, this is a major study that included 18,000 tourists. On the other hand, these people are not happy with public transportation.
Neither are Israelis.
Neither are Israelis, and there are a lot of reasons. Now, look, this makes it especially troublesome for tourists because we're Israelis, we have cars, we have, we know how to get around, we know Hebrew. A lot of the sites where they can buy tickets online are not accessible in Hebrew, and even if they're accessible in English, it's very difficult to understand where you can buy the Ravkav. We can tell our audience that it's a card,
the bus card
that allows you to, use the public transportation. So they're not happy because of that. But overall, if you're staying around Tel Aviv, you have other means of transportation, and it's less problematic.
All right. So I guess my final question is, what's being done to get this show on the road? Because as you said, people from here and abroad are very sick with. Without that.
Exactly. We need this urgently. We have over 4 million tourists coming. We can reach even 5 or 6. And a report that was published recently online, the Minister of Transportation has been quoted as, "I will not allow this project to be delayed. Wow. As far as I'm concerned, it's going to happen and start according to schedule."
All right. Well, here's hoping. Vili, thank you so much for coming.
Pleasure.
All right, now if you think that winter sports aren't a thing in Israel, think again. An Israeli skier has just made a big win, and ILTV's Nittany Manson has the scoop.
Israel may not be known for its being cold, but yes, it does snow in the Holy Land sometimes. And yes, you can ski or snowboard on Israel's Mount Hermon, which has been caked with snow for the last 2 weeks. And now the Israeli teen Noah Zoloz has just snagged Israel's first ever Winter Youth Olympic medal. The 16-year-old has just brought home a silver and a bronze from Switzerland, and it looks like she could have a big future in the sport. Noah was originally born in Hungary, but says she hopes she's made everyone proud at home. And it's safe to say that she has. Israel has only ever won medals in the Summer Youth Olympic Games in swimming, athletics, sailing, taekwondo, and aerobic gymnastics.
No place for hate is just one of the slogans that Americans have been using as a way to protest anti-Semitism. And now one basketball team is using it to show their support as well. Here with this New York story is ILTV's Shanna Fold. Shanna, take it away.
Okay, so no place for hate. That's what was written on shirts that the New York Nets were wearing. And they wore these shirts for a warm-up when they were getting ready for their game last night, which, by the way, they won 108-86 against the Atlanta Hawks, which I was excited to find out. So they wore these, the ADL set them up with the shirts, and the idea is to fight anti-Semitism.
All right, so why... tell me why the ADL is working with the Nets. Not that I have anything against the Nets, but, why this team specifically and maybe not all of the teams or several?
So once I looked into it, I saw that I noticed that the Brooklyn Nets are Brooklyn, and I said, why Brooklyn? And Brooklyn is the place that has actually had a lot of hate crimes. Now, 13 out of 17 anti-Semitic assaults in New York City took place in Brooklyn in 2018. So that's actually very high, and I think that the idea is to try to combat the anti-Semitism in the place that it is most concentrated. There's a big Jewish population in Brooklyn. Now, also, in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams, has a new program, also in coordination with the ADL, where they are going into 40 public schools and teaching kids what bias is and how not to be hateful.
That was really around the time of the Muncie attack that was kind of first announced. But I understand that anti-Semitism isn't just a Brooklyn problem, and in fact New York is also exploding with record high numbers of anti-Semitic attacks. Isn't that right?
Now, this morning, this report came out actually about New Jersey, and the numbers are really shocking. The anti-Semitism is up by 65% this year over last, and last year had 944 incidents of anti-Semitism that were reported, and that's the highest number that New Jersey has had since 1996. So that's 24 years.
That's insane. All right, so but there are things that are being done. I mean, there was a march in New York not long ago. You were there, actually.
So actually, one of the things that attracted me to this story, and I've been covering it, is New York just did a huge march, and it had a lot of people from Connecticut, from all over the East Coast that came to march over the Brooklyn Bridge from Manhattan into Brooklyn. They ended up in Cadman Plaza, and I was there to report on it. I got to talk to a lot of people who feel really passionately.
It was awesome and powerful.
It was very powerful, and there were so many people.
All right, well, Shanna, thank you so much for being with us, and it's good to see some support like that. Thank you again for coming in. Now, don't you ever wonder what people are searching for on the internet? Well, Google has it all cataloged, and they've released the top hotel searches, but you didn't think I was going to say hotel, around the world. Spoiler alert, Israel made the cut. Now, we at ILTV may not be mind readers, but Google is. And thanks to 2019 data, we know that Tel Aviv was the 5th most searched city in terms of hotels. Number 1 was Da Nang, Vietnam, followed by Sao Paulo, Brazil, Seoul, South Korea, and Tokyo, Japan. The information was revealed in a Google blog post where the writer looked through hotel search data on Google and found the top 10 trending destinations for the year ahead. It's not totally surprising, though. Tourism increased by 55% between 2018 and 2019, reaching just under $7 billion in revenue, according to the Ministry of Tourism. All right, now Israeli Wonder Woman Gal Gadot is making headlines yet again. And no, it's not because she's taking on another epic film role. The actress and model has now just been named as the new face of Smart Water. You know, the water that's apparently very smart. Smart water is a bit different than your average bottle of water because it adds electrolytes to the mix. And now the company even offers water bottles that are subtly infused with fruity flavors. And for the last 12 years, Jennifer Aniston has been the brand's ambassador, but now Gadot is taking over and will appear in most of the smart water advertising. The Israeli star also seems to be very excited about representing the brand, saying, quote, "First of all, I love water. I love to drink water. I do it all the time." And it was the perfect match. And now for this week's entertainment rundown, ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here, and we're covering what Israelis just cannot stop talking about when it comes to the Oscar nominations and Oscar snubs this year. Emmanuel?
Hey, Aaron. So last night, Jewish actress Scarlett Johansson made history as the 12th actor to be part of the exclusive Oscar club. It was announced that she received 2 Oscar nominations for acting in the same year, which only 11 others before her had achieved. She's up for Best Actress for her leading role in Marriage Story and Best Supporting Actress for her role in the film Jojo Rabbit.
That is huge.
Yeah.
Has anyone actually ever won the nominations before, both of them?
No, not yet. No actor or actress have yet to win in both categories. So it's going to be super interesting to see if she manages to truly make, the history, the elite club history, even though those 2 nominations are a win in general for the former face of the Israeli SodaStream company.
All right, well, here's, crossing my fingers, and that's definitely, true. But what's next on the list?
So back in December, Jewish actor Adam Sandler, who plays the lead role in the recent film Uncut Gems, promised Howard Stern that, quote, "If I don't get an Oscar nomination, I'm going to come back and do one that is so bad on purpose just to make you all pay, and that's how I'll get them." So basically, I guess we should totally be preparing for the worst film of all time, considering Sandler was absolutely snubbed at last night's Oscar nominations.
All right, well, I'm actually pretty conflicted on this one because I'm rooting for Sandler, but, I'm more excited, about this potential take on the worst movie ever.
Yeah. Sandler, who absolutely stunned viewers with his portrayal of a hustling jeweler with a gambling problem, totally deserved a nomination, and most people are not happy about it. However, Sandler tweeted, quote, "Bad news, Sandman got no love from the Academy. Good news, Sandman can stop wearing suits."
As if he wears suits regularly now. Right. But I love that he's taking it in, a lighthearted fashion, and everyone knows he deserves a nomination for many roles, including this one.
Okay, but I did really quickly want to mention a few Israeli films that did receive Oscar nominations in the past. The 2012 film The Gatekeeper was nominated for Best Documentary. Sure. The 2012 film Aya was nominated for Best Short Film at the 2015 Oscars. And the 2008 film Waltz with Bashir was the first animated film to be nominated in the Best Foreign Language Film category. And a bunch more movies are also on that list.
All right, well, let's hope next year's Oscars, we'll see a lot more Israeli films being represented on that list as well. Thanks for the update, Emmanuel.
Of course.
And finally, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be clear to partly cloudy and cool with average lows around 49 Fahrenheit or 9 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow should be cloudy, but with a slight rise in temperatures. You can expect the highs to reach about 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius. And now before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel on tubing.
ועמית מנסה לשים גרביים עכשיו עם בטן, בוא נראה. כן. אין טיפים.
Now, for those who don't speak Hebrew, he's trying to put on socks as if he were a pregnant woman. It's probably a little payback from his wife, who wants him to feel what she feels. And I think we're all happy to see some struggle on the other side here. But that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.47 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you so much for watching.